Welcome to the Child Anxiety FAQ podcast. FAQ stands for Frequently Asked Questions, and I'm answering your questions about child and teen anxiety. My name is Dawn Friedman, and I've been working with kids and families for more than 30 years as a preschool teacher, parent educator, family case manager, clinical counselor, and now as the owner and operator of Child Anxiety Support, where I coach parents of anxious kids. This week's question is, how can I manage the guilt and struggle that comes with parenting an anxious child? That's not really the question they asked. It was a long email, and much of it was about guilt and how the guilt gets in the way and makes it difficult for them to make decisions. I get that. I think that this is a snake eating its own tail, because parenting anxious kids asks so much of us and it's so difficult. And we are often feeling overwhelmed by our anxious child, getting angry with our anxious child, getting angry with ourselves, looking at our anxious child struggle to function and feeling like it's something that we did. And then we have all the baggage that comes with being a parent. So for example, that baggage might be, I was anxious and I think I've passed my anxiety on to my child. It's all my fault. I've been doing things wrong, especially if we're anxious. Anxiety comes with that negative way of looking at the world, and that includes a negative way of looking at your parenting. And so guilt can often be a part of the issue that actually creates the issue. That's the snake eating its tail part of it. Guilt is part of being a parent, I think. Guilt and regret, it kind of comes with the territory to some extent. If you really want to be a good parent, then sometimes you're going to let yourself down and then you're going to feel bad about it. I think it's just part of the deal. Maybe you turned your kid around in their car seat earlier than the current recommendations are. That's one for me. Back when I was raising kids, you didn't have them in the car seat as long. I didn't have them in a car seat as long. I could feel guilty about that, but I'm also like, well, I didn't know. I had him in the car seat for as long as I was told to have him in the car seat. So that's part of it. You're going to get new information as a parent, and that new information is going to make you look back and go, wow, I wish I had had that new information way back then because I would have done it differently. But you can't know what you don't know. So when you have guilt about those kinds of things, please, please, please give yourself a break. I also want you to give yourself a break if you feel guilty because sometimes you did not live up to your own standards. You snapped at your kid when you wish you had been calmer. You took the easy way out instead of hanging in there and facing the parenting pitfalls. You zoned out and they ended up getting into some kind of trouble because you weren't supervising them close enough. Again, this is part of parenting. It's part of being a parent. Sometimes we are going to do things and we're going to say, I wish I'd been more on the ball about that. Anxious kids require a lot of us. Parenting a child with anxiety requires a lot of us. We're not always going to have the bandwidth that they are demanding of us. And then we're going to feel bad. The issue really becomes when we overcompensate. You have your anxious child. Your anxious child is pushing all your buttons. Yes, snap at your anxious child. You feel so bad about it that you end up allowing your anxious child to continue to avoid the things that make them anxious. I had a classic situation with a parent where they had done something by mistake. Let's say they forgot to sign the field trip form and their child didn't get to go on the field trip, and the child didn't like that and felt really upset by it and was really let down by the parent. This parent understandably felt terrible about it. But every time in their future they were struggling with their child would say something like, you never loved me. You don't even like me. Remember the time you forgot to sign the permission slip. And boy, did that trigger the parent. And then the parent would go, oh my gosh, you can do whatever you want. You can have whatever you want. I have so harmed you that I must forever make up for it. No. That's just not true. Now, is it too bad that that parent forgot to sign the field trip? Yeah, it's really too bad. Did the parent apologize profusely? Oh gosh, did that parent apologize profusely? But that parent cannot build a time machine and go back and fix it. If the parent was constantly letting that child down, if that parent was constantly not coming through, that deserves some examination. That needs to be fixed before we can rebuild the trust with the child. But this is not the case of most of the parents that I see. Most of the parents I see are doing a pretty good job and occasionally are forgetting things, are snapping at their kid, or losing their temper, are not being as lovely as they hope to be. That is the reality of parenting. Now, how can that parent use that to inform things moving forward? Because they're setting that example for their child too. If their child says, but you hate me, you don't love me, or you would have done this thing for me 72 years ago that I'm still throwing in your face, and the parent can say, enough. I have apologized and apologized. But we're not talking about the field trip. We're talking about you need to go to sleep by yourself. I need to be able to go clean the kitchen and you need to stay in your own bed. Or you need to quit snapping at your sister. And if they say, well, but you snap at me. Hey, no. In this family, we all try to do better. We don't make excuses. I'm trying to do better. I expect you to try to do better. You are also allowed to get angry with your child. A lot of parents really struggle with anger. We're allowed to get angry. You're allowed to raise your voice. You're allowed to have an angry face. In fact, it's important that you do that because your child is also a person who needs to handle anger in appropriate ways. And they're going to have friends and partners and children who will get angry with them, and they need to know how to handle anger. Now, anger does not mean name calling. It doesn't mean shaming or blaming. It just means being angry, using an angry voice, using an angry tone, saying, I am really angry. Angry people don't always have time or energy to process things and process things. Many parents over-discuss, over-process. This is why I am angry. I am very upset when you can just say, what the heck? You know this is not okay. Not okay. You could just be angry. You don't have to apologize for being angry, even if your anger is upsetting to them. They're allowed to be upset. Again, I'm not talking about shaming or blaming or calling your child names. I'm not talking about that, but saying, I am furious. I expected you to stay in your bed. You're back out here again, and you know I have things to do. And your child bursts into tears, and you feel so guilty. But you've been clear up front, especially if you are working on getting out of those parenting pitfalls. If you have a clear plan, if you've been working with me, we will talk about this. And then your child comes out of the bedroom again. Of course, you're going to get angry. It is fine to say, this is not time for this. You need to get back in your room and go to bed. And your child will go into the bedroom and maybe they will feel lonely. Maybe they will feel like it's not fair and you're mean. We are leaning on the big picture of you are fair, you are understanding, you are nice, and you're holding a boundary and they don't like it. If you were someone who often felt abandoned or misunderstood or alone in your family of origin, you may really struggle with this. But the thing to remember is that all the work you have done in your parenting, all the loving attention, all the attunement and connection is what you're leaning on here. Your relationship with your child can survive conflict. It can survive hurt feelings. It can survive anger. And in fact, it will grow stronger as your child learns that you can be angry with each other and it doesn't mean the rupture of the relationship. That you can be mad at them and you still love them, that they can be mad at you and you'll still love them, that they can hate you and you are strong enough to handle it, that you trust the relationship enough that they can trust it too. If you find your guilt is getting in the way of getting out of the parenting pitfalls of child anxiety, then you need to work with me or someone like me, because you're going to need some handholding, and that's fine. That's why professionals like me exist, is to help hold your hand. See you next week.